And you men can be pleased with the men who've created things before you. So you have a history, a lineage of the men in the past. Look at the founders and what they accomplished before you. You can be pleased and proud as men of that. And we don't really use the word proud much. We use humility. But the point is, you can be very pleased and stand on the shoulders of giants of the founders, the American founders, right? And how accomplished they were and what they did for this nation. They set up freedom. They wrote that U.S. Constitution, and it protects your freedom. That's a great accomplishment. Magnificent. One of the greatest documents ever in the history of the world, if not the greatest. Constitution and Declaration, who wrote it? Men. So you can be proud and pleased with your lineage. Please. Let's use the word please. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification button. Thank you. So, he talks about the world has turned its back on our most prized virtue, manliness. To use manliness as a virtue today would lead to claims that the author of such words is a sexist, misogynist, archaic jerk who sees men as something that is in a way better than women. It is these same humans who praise feminism as a virtue of softness and kindness and understanding, yet venomously attack anyone who opposes their views. And we could stop here a while on what feminism has done, but we know why people are opposing, right? If you've got an agenda, sometimes it's easier to attack the person. And if you want a weak group of men and you want to control society, then it makes sense that you would do that and attack them. You don't want discussion, you want to shut it down and censor it, right? So it all seems, he puts this down. He says, it all seems so silly and irrational to attack someone for disagreeing opinion that's what's being done. Well, it's not irrational, really. If you've got a faction that wants power and control, it makes complete sense. And if the cultural Marxists wanted to change the institutions, it makes complete sense, right? So if you want to control society in an oligarchy or totalitarian society or whatever form you choose, and you want more power and money, then you would want a lot of weak men, right? Easier to control. So that makes complete sense why you would attack them. Saul Alinsky, destroy the person, right? Going on, to these few, manliness can't be a virtue because it praises something that is typically held by one sex. It is too exclusive and unfair to be real. So there's real people that believe that, right? That don't want the differences. There's real people, not just the powers that be, that believe. And their cultural Marxists, of course, wants to destroy the sexes, right? So that's the whole faction. Men can be a woman, woman can be a man. Confusing. So look, the differences in men and women are great, and they create the attraction. So we should celebrate them, not denigrate them. Men and women are different, that's it. That is it, gentlemen. Going on. It is the same problem we run into when it's said that men are typically stronger than women. It's a fact. We're born with a greater amount of muscle mass because our vastly different hormonal makeup. That's why we don't want men in women's sports, right? It's unfair. What isn't realized by misplaced souls who oppose this truth is that stronger doesn't mean better, right? It doesn't mean better. Different doesn't mean better. In fact, it's complementary. Men and women complement each other. We can choose to make each other better and enrich each other, right? Men and women can make each other better and enrich each other. All right, somewhere along the line, the wonderful thing that is feminine energy began to exist only in comparison with that uniquely wonderful thing that is masculine energy. Again, masculine energy, feminine energy, what creates the attraction? Masculine men are attracted to what? Feminine women, usually, generally, a lot of times, most times. So he goes on to say they will stand on their own without attacking each other, and depending on the other is a measure for good or bad, right? Feminine is something the world needs, he says, and humanity needs the masculine, right? And we need men and women, but we need masculine energy and feminine energy, and they complement each other. Going on. And we need both to be independently defined and equally praised and revered in their own way, right? Let's praise women. Let's praise men. Praise both, and then let's have phenomenal friendships, communities, families, and a society, because men and women should be working together, not in competition or not as enemies, because we are not. Men and women are not enemies. They are not enemies. They can make each other better. All right, manliness is something that society needs in spades, right? That's right, we agree with that, and men need to strive and possess and develop it. That's right, you gotta strive for it, you gotta possess it, you gotta take it. That is correct, that's what we're doing here, restoring men, we need men. In a world where if the world were filled with more manly men, we would have many more protectors and far fewer dependents. Okay, that's true, and you'd have more what? happiness, fulfillment, enriched families, and a better society. And the roles would go well. Going on, our world would be better on the whole, and somehow this important virtue is never uttered in the conversations of men and women because of our increasing desire not to offend and not to disagree. Right? You want to know a manly quality? You men have the ability to peacefully stand for the truth in a kind way to some people, and the approach will be different. And that's a manly quote, because you may be saving someone's life. A lot of people don't want conflict or disagreement. You as men have to be prepared for conflict and disagreement and bring things to people's attention peacefully and kindly. Someone may get upset with you. It may cost you something. That's okay. It's a manly virtue. You could be doing something good for the world, right? If you're pointing out something to someone that needs to hear it in a kind way, you may be doing something great for that person or society by telling the truth rather than just going along to get along, rather than to avoid confrontation, avoid conflict. All right, therein lies a problem that will lead many to more problems. As manliness falls victim to a hypersensitive society, so goes the open forum for debate. We believe in free speech and debate here. That was for the college campus, for where political correctness takes root. We can no longer debate freely or disagree without feeling retribution. So you have people on both sides now pushing for certain kinds of hate speech that they don't agree with or they don't want for control. You need debate in a republic, in a society, so that people can get along better after they debated. And people need to be able to express themselves. And where an open forum and university shrinks, society suffers. 100%. We've talked about this. We're unable to address our differences and unable to grow, right? How do you grow without talking to each other? What's one of the number one reasons for divorce in America? Communication about money. One of the top reasons. So you got to communicate with other people in a society, in a republic, to have a republic. Now, some people, some factions don't want to debate, right? If you're a totalitarian, you want to control that narrative, shut it down, and tell people what to think. If you're the Marxist indoctrination centers, you want to tell people what to think, right? Shut down censorship, misinformation, disinformation. What's the next word? It's going to come up with a word to shut down what? Conversation and ideas you disagree with, because a lot of times freedom side has the better ideas, right? We have the winning ideas, so just shut it down. And growing is one of the most important values for many people. We want you guys to grow. We want to grow. Going on, where manliness was once the heart of virtue itself and the heart of faith and the success of society, it is no longer uttered even as we continually praise the men who held what it is to be manly in the highest regard. So he goes on to talk about bringing back this virtue. That's what we want to do, manliness as a virtue. The difference between the old and the new education. Oh, this is a good quote. The difference between the old and the new education, in a word, the old was a kind of propagation, men transmitting manhood to men. The new is merely propaganda. C.S. Lewis has some good books. See, you got to be around other men. So if you've got an uninvolved father, you got to get in a strong men's group or something else. Somehow you got to develop your manhood. Get other men to bring you along. Of course, he also wrote The Abolition of Men, C.S. Lewis, another great book. We should go into that one day. Manliness has been a virtue to aspire to, earned throughout the world and throughout history. The way of a superior man. Confucius said, this is a good quote he put in here, is threefold. Here are some good points from Confucius that he puts in. Virtuous, he is free from anxieties. How do we deal with that? So as a man, right now, what is your solution, your system to deal with anxieties? How do you deal with them? It's a question you should ask and write down later. So write this down. How are you going to deal with anxieties? Today, tomorrow, this week, this month, and how are you going to free yourself from anxiety? Look, if you write out a piece of paper and write out a plan, and here's another trick. Have gratitude. Write out some things you have gratitude for. And once you start looking at what you have, rather than what you don't have, it might free you from some of those anxieties. What do you want to do to free yourself from anxieties? Are you anxious? How do you deal with it? Wise, he is free from perplexities. All right, so if you've got a clear vision and a belief system, value and virtue system, it's going to be easier to make decisions and you're going to be wiser, right? So Aristotle had his 13 qualities, I believe it was, virtues, and you have a system. The Knights had a Knights code. The Bible has a whole code. Right? So what's your code, and how are you making decisions, and what makes you wise? And wisdom's not talked about enough either today. We talked about it in the first video. Aristotle talks about it. We want wise men. And again, wisdom's not focused on enough. Again, you're in control of it, and you don't have to have money to have wisdom, right? You don't have to be born wealthy either. You don't have to have an involved father to choose to have wisdom. And number 3, bold. He is free from fear. So how many of us, everybody's going to have to work on certain fears that you have. Bold, he is free from fear. So look at during the thing that went on, the whole shutdowns and COVID, the masks, the jabs, all that stuff. Think about how if only probably 11% of men had not worn a mask, it would have been over like that, right? Instead of being afraid to walk in Walmart with it. I've got some pictures. Anyway, I've got some pictures of me standing in a store, everybody in a mask. Anyway, but me. So anyway, here's going on. The values that befit manliness, whether it's in the East or the West. So the point is standing up for what you believe. Going on, the values that befit manliness, whether it's in the East or the West, whether it's in the small tribes. So here he ties all this together. Bustling civilization in America seems to be innately learned and taught, right? So there used to be, by the way, rites of passage. The tribe would teach men how to become men. And fathers used to be on the farm teaching, right? So we've kind of lost a lot of them. I mean, you've got so many uninvolved fathers now that have checked out, according to the stats I read, or simply gone from divorce. But they could be in the home and uninvolved. Similar traits and rules that we now attempt to remove from the act of being manly. Robert E. Lee, great biography read on him, even listed manliness as one of his rules for private and public life when he said this: truth and manliness are 2 qualities that will carry you through this world much better than policy or tact of expediency or other words that were devised to conceal a deviation from a straight line. Thank you, Robert E. Lee. By the way, there's a great story about Robert E. Lee. Maybe we'll come back to it at the end. But it's a great story about him being such a man. Both Lee and Confucius, 2 men from very different parts of the world and living in uniquely difficult times, saw manliness as this, and here's the way they defined it: strength, boldness of action, and what? Purpose. We talk about it all the time. You got to have a purpose. You men need a purpose. What is your purpose? Have you figured it out? Got to have a purpose, I think, for most men. So we talk about boldness and purpose a lot, which boldness can help you with your purpose, right? How bold are you? Do you take risk as a man to achieve what you wish? Are you bold? If you see a fantastic girl that you think would be great to date, will you go up to her and ask her out? How bold are you in your endeavors, in your career? What do you do that's bold? Name one thing this month you can do that's bold. Do you know your purpose? It's a key, we believe, for most of you to be fulfilled. You got to have a purpose. Men need a purpose. Could be many things. We're not going to take the time to go into that today. We have a video on it. Going on. Holy Bible, and I've always liked this verse, in Corinthians 1:16-33 says, be watchful, stand firm in the faith, act like men, be strong. Great, right? That's fantastic, right? When manly action and strength are spoken in the same breath, they don't conjure up an image of a physically spirit human, right? You could have virtue and manliness and not be in shape and not lift weights, right? You could. It's not who can lift the most weights. A spiritually tougher individual who can persist. Persistence comes out over and over, grit. With a clear mind while others lose theirs and quit, right? Don't give up. Don't give in. Churchill said, never give in. Great speech. We don't want you to give in because you keep going. So who can persist? Who's tough? Doesn't take money to do that. Who can persist? Who's tough? Who can keep going after so many disappointments and trials? Who can keep going? Who can keep going after they lose everything? After they go through a bankruptcy? After they lose their wife? Who can keep going? You can persist, gentlemen. So stop here, reflect on your life a little bit. Or no, keep going, but after we finish this video, stop and reflect on your life a little bit. Can you persist after disappointments? and keep going on the goal? Do you continue after defeats and keep going? That's a very manly quality, keep going after defeat. From the Holy Bible to Gandhi, manliness was about what? Honor and courage. We don't even hear these words much. Where is it? You can look at John Wayne. You can watch a John Wayne film and you'll see honor. You'll see loyalty. You'll see courage. You can read Churchill. You can read his biographies. Biographies are great, right? You can see Elon Musk's grit in his biography that just came out. You can see it in Churchill's biography, which his biographies are fantastic for men. Gandhi said, personally, I hold that a man who deliberately and intelligently takes a pledge and then breaks it, boy, this is one of our things, right? Do what you say, we say, in Restoring Men in History. This is what Gandhi said. I hold that a man who deliberately and intelligently takes a pledge and then breaks it forfeits his manhood. Do what you say is one of our mottos. Do you do what you say? If you say you're going to be somewhere, do you show up? If you can just do what you say as men, it will set you apart. And guess what? You will build trust with it. If you do what you say, you will build trust with it. Women can trust you more because you're doing what you say. Men can trust you more, and other opportunities can develop from it. But the reason to do it is because it's the right thing to do. That's what you do. If you say you're going to be somewhere, be somewhere. If some emergency arises, call and text and let the person know. Consideration. Going on. Manhood to Gandhi was never about brute force, but about the forcefulness of the spirit. See how we're talking about the spirit now? It was a matter of honor when weakness is far easier, right? Sometimes taking the tough way, the strong way, the truth way is going to be harder, right? It's easier to go along and be comfortable, right? I just want to go along. I just want to go along. I just want to get on the plane. I just want to go on vacation. I'll just put it on. Right? Back to it. The themes of manly virtue always seem to find a common ground. This isn't my mistake. It's clearly found not in weakness of the spirit, but in what? Strength. You won't find manliness in what? A quitter. Kurt never quits. Jack never quits. See, I know some great men that never quit. I call him Kurt Mr. Perseverance. He never gives in. But that man who enters the arena, we want you guys in the arena. As Theodore Roosevelt called it, we've done that speech. Great speech, by the way. And fights until the battle is what? Won, or at least finished. Remember 300, the movie? Man in the arena, one of my favorite quotes. A man isn't a bystander to life nor a critic. He's a man of action and honor, of courage. Manliness isn't timidness, but force of purpose. Again, consider your purpose. Why are you here? What do we need to do today? What do we need to do next week? What are you here for the next 20 years? What are you here to do? What are your special gifts? What are your talents? You are unique, man. You have something to offer the world. Do it. So come on back and we'll get into some more things and some more good quotes and some more actions. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification button.